everybody good to go? Camos? Excellent. Fantastic to be here in Carlingford this morning with the Transport Minister, Joe Haylen. We're going to speak a bit about light rail, of course, industrial action in the run-up to New Year's Eve. Firstly, with the light rail, we can report that there's been over 25,000 passengers that have used the new extension to light rail since Friday, a massive number in the run-up to Christmas. It was unheralded, but obviously opened, and people have really swarmed to it, which is exactly what we want to see. In the coming years, this part of Sydney will be serviced with light rail, brand new metros, brand new heavy rail network as well, the existing heavy rail network, as well as buses and other forms of transport like ferries. And as a result of that, we can have more housing, more people living in this community with access to world-class public transport. We're really glad to see the community respond, and we certainly want to thank everybody, the 15,000 workers that were involved in the construction of this project. It genuinely is city shaping. It'll make a major difference to Sydney, and I'm sure they're going to take a lot of pride in its completion and its heavy use by the people of this town. I want to speak about the industrial dispute in Sydney, particularly from the combined rail unions, and we've noticed and heard from the RTBU this morning. Just want to reiterate that the only way through this is for the rail unions to pull their industrial action in the run-up to Christmas and New Year's. It's just too important for Sydney. It's just too important for our economy. There are literally millions of people that need to see family, to see friends over the Christmas period, and having the kind of chaos on our transport network as a result of this industrial action is the opposite of what an international city wants and needs. Now, we have made good faith offers to the unions, not only over the last weekend and the last week, but stretching back months and months. All of them have been rejected. And I think that at some point, the union leadership has to say, well, we've been given a fair offer. We can't hold the people of Sydney hostage as a result of them not accepting that offer. At the end of the day, 8% each year for 4 years, a 32% increase in salaries is something that we cannot afford. New South Wales taxpayers can't afford it. The rail system can't afford it. And what it would mean under those circumstances is literally a massive increase in the amount of fares that are charged to New South Wales commuters if we agree to that salary increase. Something in the order of 17% a year, each year for 4 years. Fares would have to go up if we were to cover the union claims of 32% over 4 years. Now, when you consider that families are doing it tough enough at the moment, particularly in the Christmas period, we can hardly ask them to reach even further into their pocket to pay for that kind of pay increase, that kind of salary increase for RTBU and combined rail union members. So we're asking them to be reasonable. They don't want to sit down and work out an agreement now, then we would ask them to pull all industrial action over the coming period of time. It's just too disruptive to Sydney, and when you've got a lot of businesses and a lot of families that want to spend time with their friends over this period, that kind of disruption could be really ruinous to a lot of businesses and a big part of the economy. I've seen this morning that the rail unions have demanded that the government introduce fare free days. I just want to make it clear that I stupidly agreed to that twice in the last 6 months, hoping that it would solve the industrial dispute. But the strikes kept happening and the industrial dispute went longer. Nothing changed. So twice the unions have demanded that the government introduce fare free days. We've done it on 2 occasions, and yet the dispute goes on and on and on. At the end of the day, this is a trust issue. We don't think we can trust the union to follow through to pull all their industrial bans. Not to mention the offer that was given to the government over the last 12 hours would see fare-free days forever until we agree to their 8% a year salary increase or a 32% pay rise. Now, when you consider that would cost the government about $100 million at least a month, and at the same time they're demanding far more out of the transport budget, look, the two things don't align. I think that this is a bit of a game, but the game, unfortunately, is at the expense of the people of Sydney. We do need a breakthrough. We're going to be in court tomorrow. We'll wait for that judgment, but the stakes couldn't be higher, and I just want to make a point. The government had to draw a line in the sand. We're not trying to be bloody-minded, and we believe we have been reasonable, but if I went back to the negotiating table today and agreed with the union's demands, then I can promise you one thing. Next year's New Year's would be on the table, so would the State of Origin, so would the Grand Final, so would Christmas, so would Easter. The pattern would repeat over and over again. At the end of the day, the government has to draw a line in the sand, acknowledge that we've given a fair offer, and ask for the industrial dispute to be over. Joe?
I want to thank the 15,500 workers that worked over 5 years to deliver Parramatta Light Rail, a brand new public transport service for Western Sydney, and it's much loved already. We've had a fantastic weekend aboard the Parramatta Light Rail with 25,000 people tapping on and off, getting to do that last bit of Christmas shopping, getting to the Westmead Hospital precinct and changing between different modes of public transport. We've had our teams out on the ground to help people get used to this new service and see how it works for them and their families. And we're really pleased that we have eventually been able to open this time of the year to support those local businesses, because public transport is absolutely critical for families and it's critical for business. And it's one of the reasons why the Premier and I have been absolutely clear to the rail unions, and that is that they need to withdraw their action, because at this time of the year, families and businesses cannot afford this uncertainty. Unfortunately, it's passengers and businesses that are the victims here in the union's childish games. Now, their demands to have endless free public transport is absolutely contradictory here to their other demands. So they say they want a 32% pay increase. Well, we'd have to almost double public transport fares to pay for that, yet they want to make public transport free. It just doesn't add up, and I've got to say, it seems to me like a stunt, and that the passengers and businesses that need these public transport services right now are the victims. It's just not a fair ask on either the people of New South Wales or the taxpayers, because removing the fare box revenue that helps us provide public transport services puts a big hole in the budget alongside the wages demand of the union, 32% over 4 years. It just doesn't add up. There is no magic Christmas pudding here to pay for the union's demands. And so that's why we're asking them yet again to withdraw their actions to make sure that passengers have a way to get around, to get that Christmas shopping done, to enjoy the New Year's fireworks, and so that we can provide the services required to do that safely. Finally, I'd say there is no level of industrial action on New Year's Eve that is tolerable. We need to run 3,600 services. 3,600 services across a 46-hour period of continuous service to move millions of people in and out of the CBD. No level of industrial action is tolerable to not only get people where they need to go, but to do that safely.
Thanks, Joe, and we're both happy to take questions.
Premier, if you're not successful tomorrow in the Fair Work Commission, what other legal options do you have to make sure New Year's Eve and Christmas goes ahead?
Yeah, look, I don't want to front run it. We do have options if we're unsuccessful tomorrow. I don't want to speculate on them because we want to make sure that give the Fair Work Commission the opportunity to make that decision, but nothing's on the table. Nothing is off the table, including, I hate to say this, but including cancelling the fireworks or recommending that people don't go to the city during New Year's Eve. Now, that's an extreme position. That's not one that I want to, that's not a recommendation I want to make. That's one that the Transport Minister and the Police Minister and the Police Commissioner don't want to make as well. This is supposed to be a fun time, an important time for Sydney. But the alternative is, if you listen to the expert advice that we've got from police and from crowd specialists, is that we could have a situation where there's panic in the city, could be massive crowd problems, and we basically need it to work perfectly on New Year's Eve in order for people to have a safe and fun time.
So even if you get a win tomorrow, will you have enough train drivers to facilitate all those extra services?
Yeah, we believe so, but time's running out. It's probably our last day to make that decision. For two reasons. Firstly, we've got to get the rosters out for the rail network. Secondly, we have to get the rosters out for police, and both of them are hugely important. The police presence would have to go up if there was expected to be industrial disputes on New Year's Eve, and we don't want to put our police in that position. We don't want to put families or police in that position. So, look, I mean, some people have said, given the stakes and given the seriousness of it, why don't we go back to the negotiating table and effectively give the union what they want? My argument to that is they'll just pull the same stunt over and over again. Next New Year's will be on the chopping block, so will Christmas, so will New Year's, so will the State of Origin, so will Grand Final. Every time we have a dispute with the union, they'll pull on a stunt right at a crucial period for the city, and we'll be over the barrel with a demand to meet their demands. And I think at the end of the day, if we're in that situation over and over again, we're on a hiding to nothing, and ultimately the government has to draw a line in the sand here.
But do you have any sympathy then for nurses who can't hold the state to ransom in the same way? People sick and die.
Yeah.
Do you have any sympathy for them?
Look, of course I do, but I made the point several weeks ago, if we settled on the... How can I be in a situation where I'm saying yes to the rail union's massive pay increase while at the same time saying no to nurses? That is completely unsustainable. And that's one area that I completely agree with the nurses unions about.
Is that not what you did with the police though?
Absolutely not. I mean, if you look at the police deal and the negotiation that we struck with the police association, particularly in relation to the police blue ribbon insurance scheme, it was a genuine negotiation. Now, I want to make it really clear, in terms of our negotiations with the rail unions, they have given up nothing. Nothing coming across the negotiating table. In fact, the asks from the union are for an extra week's leave a year, as well as a massive increase in salary and pay. Oh, I can't do a deal on those terms.
Premier, how damaging would it be to city's reputation for this violence?
Look, it'd be a massive reputational damage to the city. That's why we're hoping for a positive result from the Fair Work Commission tomorrow, but I can't guarantee that. And I'm just being honest with the people of Sydney and the businesses of Sydney. The stakes couldn't be higher. I recognise it's absolutely important, but for me to agree to the rail union's terms today, I think would be inviting more industrial chaos next New Year's Eve, next Christmas, next Easter, all the way into the future. And we have to draw a line in the sand.
And could you offer a counter-offer to give free public transport just over the New Year period? Or I know you said before that was sort of off the table.
Yeah, look, I think we're in the court's hands now. They're going to make a decision tomorrow. Ultimately, this is just... we can't be in a situation where we're throwing over offers to each other at the 11th hour. Ultimately, the court's going to have to step in here and make a decision because the public, the people of New South Wales are the pawns in this.
Do you have an update on service disruptions at the moment and any cancellations today?
Yeah, there's been cancellations. We're not running to timetable across the network. It's not as destructive as it was on Thursday and Friday. However, there are still no rail services south of Wollongong. I mean, it's extraordinary. You've got hundreds of thousands of people that live below Wollongong that need to use public transport, either to finish off shopping, to visit family, to visit friends over the busy Christmas period. And we've had to bus in buses to get urgent public transport help. It's just not on. And ultimately, this is what you can expect into the future unless the government, frankly, decides to draw a line in the sand and says, we need to sort this out and we need to sort it out soon.
Premier, briefly, you said last time you agreed to their demand in terms of
Yeah.
OB, you said that was stupid. Do you agree that your handling of this process has only prolonged it for years?
No, I don't.
Why was it a stupid decision to say yes if you're still in the situation you are now?
Because I thought it would solve the dispute, but it hasn't. And I'm not going to make the same mistake 3 times.
Premier, is the union doing itself any favours by losing public opinion, by disrupting their New Year's and Christmas travel?
Look, I don't think so, but, that's up to them, I guess. They're going to have to make a judgment about that. But I don't think so. I think the public wants it sorted, but to sort it with an exorbitant pay deal where the government agrees to 8% a year, every year for 4 years, 32% increase, I think would invite more industrial disputes into the future. And as I said multiple times now, we've got to draw a line in the sand.
Do you have any advice for travellers over the next few days for Christmas and New Year's using the public transport network?
Yeah, of course we will, but I think given so much is riding on tomorrow's Fair Work Commission hearing, we'll wait for their judgment before we provide more advice to the travelling public.
Premier, New South Wales Labor is ostensibly a pro-union party, but the RTVU on Friday said it would stop inviting them into the party in the midst of these disputes. You've both called these actions a stunt. You're saying you can't trust the union. Is this the end of your relationship?
No, and I'm not even going to canvass internal party shenanigans while we've got so much at stake at the moment. The only thing that matters right now is the public transport for millions of people that live in Australia's largest city.
What's the danger though here that the damage has already been done? That people will look at this dispute and think, well, I'm not going to risk going into the city on New Year's Eve. I'm not going to risk that at all. Does that have
Yeah, look, it is a risk. It is a risk. But if the decision is made, I'm not front-running that decision, that's a matter for the Fair Work Commission, but if the decision is made on Christmas Eve, I think that's enough time for people to cement or embed their plans for New Year's Eve. I'm hoping that that does happen, but undeniably there's already an impact on one of the most important nights for economic activity in the city's calendar year.
Does that give you enough time to roster those extra staff,
Yeah.
police and the like?
Yeah, we've worked pretty hard on the contingencies. In particular, once the Fair Work Commission delayed the hearing until Tuesday, I know Transport and Police worked really hard to ensure that the contingencies were in place. But all of it rests on the decision tomorrow.
If I could ask about a different issue, if that's all right.
Sure.
The government's contingency plan, if we do see a mass resignation of psychiatrists in late January.
Yeah. Yeah, we're working hard on that plan to ensure that we've got locums and contractor services in place, particularly on an emergency basis. And I know that Health's been working on that for a while. But again, contingencies in place. We hope it doesn't come to that, but we're ready if it does.
How do you respond to criticism that a 20 to 30% increase in psychiatrist salaries would still be significantly lower in cost than replacing them with locums or VMOs?
Yeah, look, I mean, a permanent 30% pay increase, it's not a one-off, it's forever. The locum costs in that emergency period are part of our contingencies and we're putting them in place for however long the dispute goes on for.
Is it also playing into what's going on with the RTBU, that the government doesn't want to look weak in terms of pay negotiations?
No, I mean, that's not, I completely reject that. I mean, I think your average citizen would go, well, hang on, they're asking for a 30% pay rise. That is well above the private sector average pay increase over the last 12 months, the public sector average pay increase over the last 12 months, and way more than we can afford. And in those circumstances, if the choice is between the government signing a blank cheque or being reasonable around the negotiating table, I think they would expect us to protect the budget bottom line and ultimately protect how much they pay in taxes and services and charges and fees.
But isn't any contingency plan ultimately going to be more expensive than giving them?
No, I've already answered that, no. A 30% pay increase forever is more than the contingency plan that we put in place for Q1 next year.
Could I ask just on what your planning is for the next couple of for the next week or so?
In terms of an operational update, we had a very difficult weekend on the rail network, Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, more than 500 services were cancelled. We had gaps of around an hour between train services. We did see some improvement yesterday on Sunday. About 180 services were cancelled yesterday. We've seen today, obviously, a lot less people travelling on the network. A lot of office workers have taken their break. We are seeing some of our shopping precincts are quite busy around the network. And the timetable today, we've had about 60 services delayed this morning as a result of industrial action related to signallers. We haven't seen the significant number of cancellations at this stage, but our advice for passengers is to keep updated with the latest information, plan ahead and allow extra travel time until we can resolve this ongoing industrial action.
I'll ask you the same question I asked the Premier. In terms of planning, you think tomorrow, will you have enough time to make sure that there will be enough drivers on New Year's Eve?
We've been planning for New Year's Eve since February of this year. It's been multi-agency planning across the rail agencies, transport, and obviously the police and city council and event organisers. We're confident that we will be able to deliver a full timetable with 1,000 extra services that are planned for New Year's Eve, but that is contingent on this industrial action and these bans being dropped. Thank you.
Sorry, Matt, while we've got you, can you just describe currently the state of like what industrial action is currently being taken on the network today?
We've got more than 200 bans have been notified by unions. We saw impacts over the weekend from train crew. We saw impacts from signallers. We also saw significant impacts from the teams that do maintenance on our network. Track work that we normally do on weekends. We've now got 52 temporary speed restrictions across the network. That is slowing every service down as it moves around the network. That's the largest number of speed restrictions we've had in more than 12 months. The network, as a result of this industrial action, will continue to rapidly degrade unless these bans are lifted.
Can I just add one point to that? The Chief Executive's just outlined where we are currently, but we have to remember these are the bans that have been existing now for weeks and months in the lead up to today. From Monday, we move into the next round of protected action that has been notified by the unions. There will be additional bans from both the RTBU and the ETU, which will affect crewing, station staff, and the infrastructure that our trains run on. If those elements drop off, we won't be able to get those back in check in time for New Year's Eve. So that's why we need certainty now. We need the unions to say New Year's Eve is too important. We will pull back because that's the only way that we can do all of that prep work that's been building since February to get it right for next week. The other element that I'd raise is, I'm sure you will ask the union today about fare free periods, and the answer will be something along the lines of, this is something we've believed in for a long time. Well, 260 industrial demands were made as part of this enterprise agreement, and free travel was not one of them. I sat, and the Secretary of the Premier's Department and the Treasury officials sat in 2 weeks of intensive costings around potential savings measures that we could add to this enterprise agreement. And not once did free travel or subsidised travel to 50-cent trips get raised by the unions as something that they were seeking. So now to ask for this indefinite period of free travel at a time where transport teams and Sydney Trains and New South Wales Trains want to focus on more investment into the rail networks is just a stunt, and it takes us away from what we need to do now, which is ensure certainty for the coming weeks. Thanks.
Okay, so can I just ask,
a couple more and then we'll
sorry,
get going.
my last one.
Yeah, sure.
So to be very clear, if you lose in the Fair Work Commission, will you cancel the fireworks?
Sorry, what was that?
If you lose in the Fair Work Commission, to be very clear, will you cancel?
Yeah, look, I'm reluctant to put the cart before the horse because I want to see what the Fair Work Commission says, but there are options available to us if we're unsuccessful, but I don't want to canvass them right now, mainly because we respect the Fair Work process. We want to see what their determination is, and we're putting a major case together in front of the Deputy President 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Would you not rule it out?
Well, I'm not ruling anything out at this point. I'm not ruling anything out. We'll have to update the public. We'll look at our options and we'll be very clear, but we'll know more as of Christmas Eve. And look, obviously we don't want it so close to New Year's. It would have been great if this was sorted earlier, but that's where we are, and we have to wait for the Fair Work Commission's decision. All right, thanks everybody.